Hi, this is Tony Kent Writes, or Tony Kent, in fact, and this is my Twitter name, Tony Kent Writes, in case anyone didn't know that. This is Tony Kent, and this is Tony Kent Writes and Cross-Examines. And today, in the much more attractive witness box than I'm used to in my day job, we have ERIN Kelly. ERIN is the author of a host of psychological thrillers, beginning with The Poison Tree. Last year, or the year before, in fact, I think it was, she released the incredibly well-selling 12-week in the top 10 bestseller, He Said, She Said. And then she will be releasing soon, I think in July of this year, her next book, which is Stone Mothers. Now, she'll tell us all about that, and anything that I've said wrong will be corrected in due course. ERIN, how are you?
I'm good. I'm going to start with a correction, can
Good.
I?
Yes, please do.
So the book was published last year in hardback as Stone Mothers, and it's now called We Know You Know. So we had a title change. It's about a psychiatric hospital, an abandoned mental hospital, and Stone Mothers was the name that Victorians gave their, most of the big, most towns, most counties will have a big Gothic, terrifying building that people were locked in and the key was thrown away 100 years ago. And they called them Stone Mothers because they thought they would nurse the patient back to health. And our feedback from readers was that it was a really good title, but it only made sense after you'd read the book. And it didn't really make you want to pick it up. So now we've changed it to We Know You Know because there's a blackmail plot and it's all about people keeping secrets. And it's, just a bit more of a commercial title to draw as many people in as possible. And it echoes He Said, She Said, which I think will be, some books bring a followership with them. Yeah. And He Said, She Said will, will appeal better to someone who's heard of that book. Yeah.
Is it you know, or we know you know?
We know you know. It's a tongue twister, isn't it? I'm still not sure I've got it entirely right.
No, I think it's a very good title, and you may notice that having made the same mistake, I've now changed the scroll at the bottom. It now says the correct name. So we had spoken before we came on about talking about why the name had been changed, because of course you don't want anyone to think that this is any kind of a con that's trying to get people to buy the same book twice. In reality, it's marketing, isn't it?
It's marketing, and actually it's only if you bought the hardback that could possibly happen anyway.
Yes.
If you're looking on Amazon and you see a Kindle book called We Know You Know by ERIN Kelly, and you think, oh great, haven't read that one, and you've already read Stone Mothers, it won't let you repeat buy. It understands that it's the same product. Same goes for audio. So it's only the hardback buyers, although they are my favourite people, the hardback buyers, because I know what it means to pay, 10, 15 quid for an author. There's only a handful of authors that I do that for. Yeah. They're the ones with the on the first rung of the ladder to heaven. I think the hardback people. Yeah,
and also when you got your hardback, you get to go to Goldsborough, which is just
it's a rite
the best day out, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I went to Goldsborough for years and years and years because my friend of mine, in fact, is one of the owners, an old friend from years ago. And I used to go there quite a lot, and then I didn't go there at all for a long time. To actually go back there and sit and sign is just
in the hot seat.
Yeah, it's something, isn't it?
Yeah, it doesn't really feel. I know there's people say there's lots of moments when the book feels real, and yes, the first copy when you unbox your author copies, that's one, and the first review's the one. But honestly, to me, it doesn't really feel like publication day until you've been into Goldsborough and you've sat behind it. It's almost as iconic as the mastermind chair, isn't it? Yeah. And you've done that, and the books are on their way to the collectors, and that's when I really feel that the book is finally alive and out in the world. Yeah.
So Stone Mothers has been there for, as it was, Stone Mothers has been out in the world, and We Know is out in July. July the what?
July the 9th.
And that's available to pre-order now?
It is available to pre-order now. It should have been published in April, so we're chatting now. It's nearly June. Yeah. Like many other books, it was decided not to shift the publication date in the hope that supply chains and things will be a bit more back to normal. Yeah, well, I think Waterstones, under the new rules that we're about to live under, God knows what any of them mean, because they don't seem to know. But under the new rules, I think Waterstones is open again by July, isn't it? Who knows? And whatever we say will be out of date almost by the time we've finished having this conversation anyway, won't it? So.
Well, it depends on what any advisor wants to go and do, and then they'll make it legal.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll stay away from that particular subject because that could take up. We've only got 10 minutes left, and it could take up the whole time. So you started out then with The Poison Tree. That was your first novel, your first psychological thriller.
That's right. Yeah, The Poison Tree is. I think in fact, I can tell you, I started writing it 12 years ago, and I was a journalist by trade. I still am technically a journalist, and I only actually became a journalist because someone said it was easier to get a book deal if you already had your name in print somehow. But I loved being a journalist so much that every month I would always think, well, I'll write the book next month. And then another job would come up, some travel would come up, or a really interesting feature. I used to do long reads for men's health or men's fitness. I can't remember which one.
I've read them both in a vain attempt to look like the person on the front.
But I would do. I had the year before I wrote the book, I had a really interesting job where sometimes it would be about advertising control in the real kind of geekery stuff, advertising of health supplements, and then another one about steroid abuse. And they would always be so interesting. I think, well, next year I'll turn down that gig. Next month I'll turn down that gig, and then I'll start writing the book.
Yeah.
And I never did. And then I got pregnant, and I had a biological deadline to galvanize me, and I wrote the book. I thought it was always going to be so easy, because I think, like most first novels, it's you carry the weight of every book you've ever loved and every book that ever made you think, oh, I want to do that. So The Secret History was one, Barbara Vine's novels, even Brideshead Revisited, lots of books that weren't thrillers but I really loved. I had a real momentum of just reading and understanding stories. So I wrote that book in 6 months. And I thought it would always be like that. And I remember going to my acquisition meetings with my agent when I just snared an agent, talking to publishers and saying, yeah, I can, I reckon I'll be able to do a book a year, at least, 6 months writing, a couple of months promotion, and then maybe 3 or 4 months to just gather myself. And I don't know if that was because it was pre-kids or because that's just how debuts are, that you can't pop your cherry twice, essentially. You never have that experience of everything falling into place. Every book drains you, and I think without time to refill the tank, you can get quite depleted. But I just have an increasing sense that with every book, so I've just finished my 8th novel, and every time I just feel that I'm chasing my tail faster and faster. And when you have 7 other novels in the world, it's almost like keeping several plants or children or even a Tamagotchi or something alive. The backlist takes up attention in a way. And then on a practical level, of course, there's stuff you can't do anymore. There are plots you've used up, and I don't write procedural fiction. They're all standalones.
Yes.
So there's in a police procedural, you have a precinct, or if your main character's a lawyer, you have a reason. Some of your world building is already done, and you have a reason for this person to come into contact with crime.
Yeah.
With standalone psychological thrillers, you're starting from scratch every time. And I wouldn't have it any other way, because it gives me absolute freedom.
Yeah.
But it does mean that every time I finished a book, I kind of think, oh God, I've got to do it again. You're right back to you've gone right back to the foot of the mountain, and it's completely new.
Well, you're making new people each time, aren't you? Which is interesting. I really enjoy my sort of side characters. I really enjoy spending a lot of time making them and really fleshing them out. But I do obviously have the advantage of I'm still going back to my main characters, who I can assume, rightly or wrongly, that the reader will know enough about, that you don't have to introduce them from scratch, as you say.
Yeah, I've always thought it's a double-edged sword. So the main reason I don't write procedurals, I have a recurring main character, is because I look around and I see people doing it so well, and I don't think I could do it any better. So what's the point? But I also do worry that if you get tied into a series and you don't find that readership, then you're kind of locked in for X number of books, and there's a kind of diminishing returns, and that must be quite soul destroying. Or then you've got the problem of having a Hercule Poirot or a Sherlock Holmes where that's all anybody wants from you. And I would find that quite restricting. I really admire the authors who can flip between standalones and series fiction. I think that's probably the ideal way to play it. Yeah,
I was talking to Ellie Griffiths about exactly that just a little while ago. And she does that, doesn't she? She's got 2 different series, and then she's releasing standalones as well. God knows where she finds the time. So how are you doing with writing in the lockdown?
It's not great, Tony. I'll be honest with you. I'm editing at the moment, but it's early mornings. I used to write in the school day. That was my writing year. And so I'm up at 5 every morning. There is something, actually, even even before lockdown, I love to be at my desk really, really early. I'm good for nothing after about 4 o'clock. So I have these 5 to 8 in the morning. If I'm going to do anything meaningful, it's going to happen then.
Yeah.
Sometimes I do some really meaningful stuff on Facebook. Ideal. Yeah, it's lots of early mornings and a lot more screen time than my children ever thought they'd have.
Yeah.
But it's really difficult. It's not just carving out time. I chose this career because I am by nature really happy in my own company, and I don't get that anymore. It's that state of uninterrupted flow, that knowledge that nobody's in the house, that the internet's off, my phone's on silent, nobody's gonna come in. And I think you need to go a bit mad and get completely obsessed, and I haven't had that in the last couple of months. And it's that all important home stretch as well. I've never finished a book in my own house before. I always take myself away to a hotel or a B&B and just spend 3 days festering and hitting the keyboard and not sleeping and drinking coffee. And I have missed that. And my notes are coming back in a couple of days for this manuscript. And that part of things I always do in a cafe. I've got all these little routines. It's not.
I can understand that.
But I didn't really know how valuable they were until now. Well, I know that I don't have the option of a cafe. And what can I? Well, I can go and sit under a tree in the park over the road, I guess. But it's tricky. How about you?
I've not been well actually. I had COVID-19 and then I had a complication from it, and so as a result, I've not done enough at all. I've not done anything like enough writing. I've started this week, and so I've been writing in the morning before I do my interviews, and then do a bit in the afternoon as well. And I'm at the stage of the book where I'm dragging it out. So I'm dragging it out of myself, trying to set up the scenario. I'm hoping that once I get to the point where my momentum normally kicks in, that it will kick in. But by which point I'll probably have to go back to court. So we'll see.
But that can be great sometimes, having a break, getting just anything on the page, and then a couple of weeks off and using your brain in a different way, and then coming back.
Well, weirdly enough, when I was writing my last book, Power Play, I took 3 months out. I just said, right, I'm not going to court for 3 months. I'm going to write, and I think I wrote about 50 pages, if that, in 3 months. And then I had to go back to work because I had to earn a living and I had trials on. And when I went back to do that, in the next 3 months, I wrote the next 500 pages. So I think actually being back at work will make me work. I write much better when I'm working. So I can just say, right, I've got a few hours tonight. I make myself take what time's available. Whereas if there's endless time available, I will just procrastinate to the nth degree. So. But I've noticed that time is flying, Erin. So I want to talk about the next book. I've got my notes keep saying Stone Mothers, so it's We Know You Know.
I still keep correcting myself when I'm talking about it. Yes.
We haven't got a huge amount of time, so tell me about that, because I want people to go and buy it, and I'll put a link at the bottom of this video.
I want that too. Okay, so We Know You Know is based on a friend's Tinder date of all things. She went on and she was seeing an urban explorer who took her to an abandoned site.
I love the idea of that straight away. Urban explorer.
Oh, it's great. Yeah. And he's a photographer, and while he was off, photographing the ballroom where all the plants had grown through the cracks in the floorboards, she went mooching around the wards. And in one of them, she found a filing cabinet that was full of patient records. And when they shut the mental hospitals and implemented care in the community in the late 90s, lots of these hospitals were abandoned, not carefully packaged up, but it was like the 4-minute warning had gone off. I spent a lot of time online looking at urban explorer photography, and you'd find, slippers still by the bed, a book still open. And she was outraged. She works for the NHS, so she knew what to do with these records. But she said, in the wrong hands, wouldn't this be a terrible thing? It wasn't a secure hospital. These people weren't criminals, but they were incredibly vulnerable, incredibly ill. And there was personal information about trauma that you would want to protect your children from. You wouldn't want necessarily your spouse to know, let alone an employer. And I'm afraid in my book, the people who find the records realize that there's someone in here who they can exploit, and they do not do the right thing. And as a consequence of this, somebody dies, the death is covered up. And the story is picked up in the present day when Marianne, who was one of these teenagers who broke into the asylum, she's moved on from her small town life. She's got a very comfortable life in London, and she moves home into the asylum, which is now luxury flats, as I believe that someone must have passed a law in the last 15 years saying that any beautiful Victorian public building of note must now be luxury flats. And her teenage sweetheart knows exactly what she did all those years ago, and he is determined to make her pay. And it was really difficult when I was doing the research to not put everything that I found out. I found out such shocking things about things that were happening well into the 20th century. And it's my first foray into historical fiction. It goes right back, far, far back into the 50s. And when I look at my notes, my pile of notes was this high. I reckon I could probably just about scrape a PhD in writing a kind of feminist history of psychiatric treatment in the 20th century. I won't do that because I'm sick of the subject now, and I don't want to go back.
I've just looked at the clock, and I'm going to lose you in any second. Okay. So, very good luck with the book. Good luck with the paperback release. Thank you very much for today, and I hope to see you soon in person.
I would love that.